Here comes the bell. Letting the busyness of arriving begin to settle. The enjoyment of our conversation, informative nature and compassionate nature and engaged nature, as we say hello to each other for our Tuesday tea time, for which I'm extremely grateful and thankful. So starting right out, being grateful to our Sangha together and to the larger Sangha through all the generations, paying homage to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. The teachings themselves, as they got translated so many different ways and in so many different countries, but still alive today, 2,600 years later, through oral transmission in the beginning. And acknowledgement to the Buddha, the most recent enlightened being in this tradition, and the understanding on our part that we have the ability to have that freedom ourselves. And how do we do that? Well, there's various ways. We can understand the teachings, and we can actually do the practice. And in the practice of allowing ourselves to just settle down, whatever that looks like, we can do it through a walking practice. We can do it lying down. We can do it sitting comfortably, as upright as possible. Just letting the body settle onto our sits bones and noticing gravity. Gravity keeping us grounded so that we can connect in with our bodies. And we may notice immediately different things that occur, sensations in the body. There might be painful sensations somewhere. There may be spacious sensations somewhere. We could notice density or lightness, movement. And we just allow what comes to our attention be noticed. In the touching sensations, in the hearing sensations, what arrives at the ear as sound, what might arrive to the body as sensations. If we can notice these without attaching our ideas about what they are, without adding our previous understanding of conditions that arise and then that causes this, if we can just let go a little more in our recognizing and thought process, we can find ourselves a little freer from clinging, consequently letting go, and having less suffering. It gets a little tricky sometimes. The mind arises very quickly with judgments, and we can just notice that. we can sometimes abandon that thinking and incline our hearts and minds toward kindness to ourselves as we sit. We can remember loving kindness phrases. We can come up with our own feelings and phrases or not. Whatever way, there's a sense of embodying feelings of kindness as we undertake this not so easy process. Simple, yes. Easy, no. But we've been at it long enough, we kind of know what to do. We can let our attention settle on the breath. We can notice sensations happening at the nostrils or at the belly, bringing our attention to the body, noticing coolness at the nostrils on the inhale or warmth on the exhale. Or we may notice pressure as the diaphragm rises and falls. And so allowing ourselves to settle on a single object for now, whatever that may be, the breath or the touch point of the buttocks on the chair, or the touch point of the hands, the arms, the lips together, just letting the mind lightly settle in attending to that single place of awareness. Mindfulness is there. Awareness is present. We pay attention. We can notice rising and passing of the breath and rising again. And as we notice our attention wander, as it quite often does, we can pay attention as soon as we notice, lost in thought. And we can just notice right there when we wake up in that moment, whether something has a sensation of pleasant or unpleasant or neutral in that thought or in the body, wherever our attention is called. And we can gently bring it back to the breath or the touch point. to relax easily and be present with what arises. And if we notice we may be lost for a long period of time in some thought process, we may apply a little bit of our understanding of right intention or skillful thinking to let go if it's not useful, not helpful, and incline more toward holding ourselves gently, being kind in our practice, remembering in the 5 faculties of just enough effort to be present, noticing our concentration. If we return to the breath, improving our concentration, letting go of the hindrances when they arise. So we have ways of inclining the mind toward the skillful. We gain confidence or faith in the practice as we notice these moments of waking up, moment by moment whenever we do, gladdening the mind, remembering to wake up in whatever moment we wake up. Easefully, naturally. Just enough effort, not so much that we have tension in our minds, but enough to stay awake, enough to find interest in what's happening. We can open our eyes and let light in. We can stand up in place if we find sleepiness comes around. If we have a lot of restlessness and distraction in the mind, we can gently guide ourselves back to that single object. Of the breath or the seat. We may notice the mind repeating something over and over again. We could just make a soft, gentle note, just bringing in noting. If it arises and keeps arising and keeps arising, we could give it just a soft, gentle note of, thought about whatever it is. It might deter us from going along that long thought form again. Or we may notice sensation in the body. We can do the same thing with that, the soft, gentle note of pain here, or pleasure somewhere else, tingling, expansion. We can just notice various sensations throughout the body that arise and pass. Every now and then we may just need to begin again. Ask ourselves a couple of questions. What's happening right now? Maybe we've lost interest. Or what is the mood of the mind? We can always cue into what the mood of the mind is. Without judgment about it or saying it should be a certain way. We just have the neutrality of mindfulness present, awareness arising. We can stay with the constantly changing objects that arise to all of our various senses, keeping the mind flexible in its single object that arises, or we can guide ourselves back to the breath. Stay with that original single object, keeping our intention of wanting to be aware and kind and present with whatever arises. And we may add that wisdom factor that arises with awareness of noticing whatever we are attending to for as long as we can. We may notice that it is impermanent, anicca. It is arising, stays for a while, and passes away without us pushing it or pulling it, just being present to notice the changing nature of what arises. It's not really personal. If we could control our thoughts, there would be plenty of them that we wouldn't want to have, and plenty of others that we'd rather pleasantly experience. But we're here with our neutral mindfulness present, seeing clearly the changing nature of conditioned phenomenon that arises. We can't grasp it or cling to it, or if we do, we notice what's happening in the mind right now. Things might be more pleasant for a while or more uncomfortable for a while, but ultimately it passes. Constantly changing phenomenon rolling on. And we are here to be present and aware and see it, that it's non-personal. It causes suffering when we cling. And we can see it arise and pass as clearly as we can. We can feel it in the body arise and pass. We can have awareness of it in the mind, at the mind door. And each one of those moments of mindfulness, mindful awareness arising and passing, creates confidence in our practice. Each one of those moments, continuity of mindfulness. Noticing what arises, how long it stays, when it leaves. It's interesting to see if we have enough concentration to follow something through from beginning to end, or sometimes we may notice just endings. That's when we wake up. Oh yeah, that long thought train I just let go of. Now I'm waking up to this moment. I noticed the ending of it. It's a present moment of awareness, gladdening the heart and mind, leaving judgment behind. And we may begin again with a big breath that fills us and releases and helps us just refresh the page, holding ourselves kindly, gently, abandoning what may be unskillful as it arises, inclining our hearts and minds toward the more skillful. Right view, a understanding and seeing clearly the ways we cause ourselves suffering. And this doesn't have to happen on an intellectual basis. It just happens moment to moment as things arise. Gladdening, noticing joy as we wake up each moment that we are aware. There may be some more sense of stability and a more easeful sense of happiness, a more grounded sense of happiness. Sukha, the opposite of dukkha. waking up in this present moment. What is the attitude of the mind? Do we have awareness of the mind? Mindfulness at each of the sense doors, whatever arises, including the mind door. Awareness is arising easefully. As we hold ourselves gently, noticing what comes and goes with mindful attention. The river flows on. Our breath might be more subtle than when we began. Maybe we're not latching onto our thoughts so quickly. Maybe there's a little more spaciousness in the body and the mind. Whatever's happening, we can just embrace it in the fullness of our body, our breath anchored in our body. And we can incline our hearts and our thoughts and feelings toward kindness for ourselves, toward well-being, holding ourselves gently and kindly, with compassion for our foibles and our ups and downs and our quickly judging mind. Having kindness and compassion when things are not easy, when things are difficult, embracing the difficulty. Being with it, seeing it rise and pass. Present with what's happening, without grasping and clinging. Letting this sense of well-being include ourselves fully. And allowing ourselves to include within our hearts a close friend, including them in our gladness, that they be free from inner and outer harm, safe and protected, have ease, seeing them happy and healthy. Knowing that they have difficulties and allowing our hearts to be present for them, have compassion, be with them in their sorrows, without falling into despair ourselves, letting equanimity be present, just touching that place in our hearts that has compassion for another's suffering. Having it be all right to open to this compassion, feeling another person's sorrow. A kind of quivering of the heart is described in Karuna. And we have loving kindness there, present, that opens into compassion. This sense of goodwill, unconditioned, unconditional, open goodwill to our friend. And as we generate this metta and karuna, may we include a teacher in our hearts. Could be a current teacher or someone from the past. Could be a being like a child or an animal. As we envision and think upon this being, letting this kindness that grows and expands in our hearts, held in our grounded body, envisioning the teacher happy and healthy. Whatever way that manifests. Wishing in gladness that they be happy and healthy, free from harm. Opening our hearts to their sorrows and joys. Letting this compassion be present in our hearts. And wishing that they be free from their suffering, that they can embrace their own compassion when things are challenging. And letting that sense of kindness, well-wishing, that bubbles in our hearts, envisioning it bubbling in their own hearts, kindness for themselves and compassion for difficulties and challenges. And so we can notice as we develop this loving kindness and this compassion that our own hearts and minds are inclining towards skillful thoughts of kindness and compassion, including in our hearts a neutral person or a group of neutral people. Envisioning, allowing it to arise in this cauldron of our bodies, hearts, and minds, the sanctuary of our breath that's including ourself and our friend and our teacher and this neutral person or people. Wishing in gladness that they be free from suffering, have ease in their lives. Cultivating this kindness in our hearts. Just as you wish to be happy, I wish to be happy. Just as I wish to be happy, I know that you wish to be happy. We all belong to each other. And in this belonging, we include someone we don't know. Or a group of people we don't know. Letting our thoughts of loving kindness and compassion include them without attachment to the results of our thoughts. We're just wishing, including them in this heart space of ours, of kindness, gentleness, ease. Compassion for them when things are difficult. Letting the heart open just a little more, without letting it fall into extremes of pity. We just allow kindness to be present. Let equanimity balance our ability to include compassion for someone we don't know. Letting joy be present in our willingness to hold them in our hearts. And perhaps we can let this expand to a difficult person. Or a difficult situation, but not something that's so close or immediate to us that we flare off in an anger episode. But there might be difficulty that's a little more approachable, that we can just touch upon lightly, perhaps. Enough to include them or that situation in our hearts of well-being, wishing well-being to a difficult person or a difficult situation. Whatever that looks like for you, touching on it gently like the soap bubble floating around where we can just sort of look in on this difficult person and Know that it's not going to all break loose in our minds. We're just gently including kindness. Just as I wish to be happy, I know that you wish to be happy. See if we can have a little bit of including the difficult person to be free from their suffering. Calling upon equanimity as we do our best to open our hearts and minds to allow compassion toward this difficult person. It's just compassion in our hearts arising. Touching upon the difficulty with balance. As best we can. And we can always return to the container with ourselves, our friend, our teacher or benefactor, the neutral person. As we call upon ourselves with this intention of kindness, to stay as open as we can to all beings, whether they're known or unknown, whether they're seen or unseen, whether they are in sorrow or in joy, beings that swim and crawl and fly, walk, those beings embedded in the earth, in the seas. May all beings everywhere be free from suffering, be free from danger, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings everywhere be free from harm, safe and protected. And may this kindness and goodwill that we generate, that flows upon ourselves and flows out to others, may this practice benefit all sentient beings. Anicca vata sankhara upadavaya domino upakitawa maruchanti te samvapasamo sukho. All conditioned things are subject to impermanence, arise and pass away. Seeing this clearly with mindfulness brings the greatest happiness, which is peace. Thank you for your practice.